And welcome everybody to the PCS Like a Pro show. This is episode 2, and I'm your host, Megan Harless. We have a great lineup today. We're going to be talking about homeschooling and PCSing and everything that you kind of really need to know along those lines of what to do and how to make it work for you. But before we get into all of that, a couple of reminders of what you need to know, just PCS-wise kind of deal. The first one is, as we mentioned last week, move.mil is going to be going away. All of that information has transferred over to Military OneSource. So you need to start getting into the habit of going to Military OneSource to find all of your PCS information and to access DPS to be able to set up your move. DPS, that piece will stay the same. You will still have to log into DPS to set up your move, to manage your move, fill out your claim, all that good stuff. But instead of going to move.mil, you will now go to Military OneSource. Also, a lot of questions about how do we utilize DPS, all those tutorials that were on move.mil. When you go to DPS, at the very top, there's a little link that says like quick references. If you click that, all those tutorials are right there. So you don't have to log into DPS to find them, but they're right there on DPS. It'll walk you through how to set up your shipment, how to cancel your shipment, how to do all that good stuff, how to file a claim, all of those things that you need to know right there. As we get in today talking about PCSing and homeschooling, if you've got any questions for our guest Stephanie in regards to homeschooling, or for me in regards to PCSing questions in general that you need to know, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And as we have time, we will gladly pull them up on screen and try to answer them the best we can. If we cannot, I will totally take them and find the answers that you need to know and then get back to you so that way you have the information that you need. So diving right into this, we've got Stephanie here. Stephanie is a friend of mine, known her for, I don't know, how long is it now? Year and a half, 2 years?
I don't know. Got our 2-year Facebook anniversary recently, so it's official.
It's official. Facebook official.
Right.
Official, 2 years. Right now Stephanie is in Alaska, but I'll let you, Stephanie, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and who you are.
Good morning. We're in Alaska, and Poe is stealing the show this morning, guys. So this is just real life. I have been an Army wife for about 13 years now. We're on our 6th duty station with 3 boys. They are 10, 5, and a little tiny baby. So we're running the whole gambit of moving with kids and all that stuff. But we do homeschool, and this is our 3rd duty station homeschooling. So we've had several different iterations of what homeschool looks like all over the world, Germany, Texas, and now in Alaska. So.
And she makes it sound so easy with her 3 kids and moving into homeschooling. They recently did one where they did it in an RV from Texas to West Virginia to Alaska. And I loved following along those adventures. And we're going to have you back to talk about that experience. Of PCSing in an RV, because I keep trying to talk my husband into getting an RV, that we need an RV, and he's totally against it. He's like, we don't go enough places to warrant an RV. And I'm totally like, maybe we don't go enough places because we don't have an RV. Like maybe we just,
I'm team RV. And when I come back, I'll do it from the RV so you can really get the feeling of how tiny it was. And, we all survived.
Surviving is good.
And now we get to take it all over Alaska. So,
Which is exciting. Which I can't wait to see those adventures, especially once you get out of winter. I hear winter can be kind of different up there. So maybe once you get out of winter, you get sunlight again.
They tell me you get out of winter eventually. So we'll
eventually. I love it. So let's go ahead and dive right in and talk about homeschooling and PCSing. So one of the big things we always talk about within the military, bless you, is regulations and rules and what, governs what it is that we're trying to do. So what are the rules and regulations surrounding homeschooling?
So homeschooling is going to be regulated by the actual state that you live in. And so for military, I think that's what can be most complicated for us is every time you move, you're going to have to follow the regulations of a new state. So last year, my kids, we moved from Texas to Alaska. Texas is a state that has no regulations on homeschoolers whatsoever. Alaska is a state that you kind of have a choice of how much regulation you want to be under. So that's going to be the most complicated thing. And I think somewhere that people in the military, when they're looking into homeschooling, that's where you hit your most hiccups. Is like, oh, do I really want to have to do this every time? It is very doable and you can do it. You just have to remember that the state that you physically are located in is the one that you're going to have to follow their laws about. So just don't get hung up on that, like, but I was here. Yeah, you were, but you're not anymore.
So with this, does it mean now every time that we move, like, do we have to change our curriculum, or how does that piece of it kind of work?
No, definitely not. So I've changed curriculums over the years, but only when I've chosen to do so. We moved mid-year last year, and all we did was stop following the laws of Texas, and then using that same curriculum, just follow the laws of Alaska. And that's how you're going to be able to do it every time. Generally speaking, there are some states that have more regulations than others. So you might have to tweak something or add something that you weren't previously teaching, or keep attendance, show records, those sorts of things. But generally speaking, as long as you're using a comprehensive curriculum, you should be able to just carry that through from one duty station to the next.
So you kind of touched on this, but can you just go back and verify? So like moving mid-year, I can't. So like you went from Texas to Alaska, you couldn't just stick with Texas through that school year. You had to transfer and switch as if you were in a public school, switching from one state to another.
Exactly. You do have to make that transition when you move, because you're no longer in that state. So it's just like if you were in the local public school, that's the state that you have to follow their rules, their regulations. This is where you're legally responsible to. And there are resources out there to help you, especially because we have that military assistance. So every duty station that I've been at, there's always going to be, what is that person called? It's very early in Alaska.
The
education guy that you can reach out to. Who is this guy?
I know it. So we're public schoolers. So
we're gonna put it in the notes.
We attempted to homeschool once. We moved from Texas to Indiana, and I was just like, like, let's just homeschool now. Like, let's attempt it during the summer to try to see how it is. That way we can maybe continue on with it when we moved. And I attempted it, and I completely struggled with it. It was not good at all.
It's not for everyone. I am an accidental homeschooler. I actually started homeschooling because my son was going to be in first grade, and my husband had a weird PCS, TDY en route schedule going on, leaving Oconus. It was a whole disaster area. So he would have been in 3 public schools in that 1 year. And we thought, this is silly. He's not going to get anything out of that. So we started homeschooling as we're just going to get through, we're just going to get 1 year, and then mom's going back to work. And 5 years later, here we are.
That seems to be how a lot of things happen, is accidentally,
exactly.
And as you said, homeschooling isn't for everyone. We tried it. It did not go very well. I have a lot of friends that homeschool. I have one friend that has like 11 kids, and she homeschools all of them, and she makes it look flawless and everything, but it's definitely not for everyone. I will say that when schools shut down back in 2020, and we had like 3 months, and my kids were home and trying to navigate them through all of their different things, I was just like, no, we need to go back to school. We need in person, whatever the teachers need, whatever we got to do. Like, let's do it, folks. My kids need a different teacher. I was so thrilled when my husband would have like a day off, or he would be home. I'd be like, you've got a substitute teacher. I will see you all later. My daddy's going to take care of you today.
I take advantage of these sub days too.
Yes.
I will say, if you're someone who's looking at homeschooling and the virtual schooling that happened during COVID is something that's holding you back, I would encourage you to still maybe give it a shot if you feel that it's right for you. Because what I do and virtual school that I've seen my friends doing over the past 18 months are completely different things. I don't operate in that way. So if you're looking at it and that's what's holding you back, consider it. And maybe it's not for you. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
The name of that person.
But we've got it right here for you. Somebody, school liaison.
School liaison officer. Yeah. Yes, you are awesome.
Yeah.
So you reach out to them. They're going to be able to help you at every duty station. We've had one, and I still get emails from them with there's things going on posts for homeschoolers or educational things or whatever's going on to try and keep you in the loop. And that also is a resource to find your village when you move, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of kids, they find their village at school. And if you don't have that, you do need some way to find your village. So that is something that has been helpful for us as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, talking about having to switch from one state to another, the regulations, how things may different, as military, there's a lot of things that we can use our home of record for. Can we just use our home of record with homeschooling just to keep it simple and not have to do the switcheroo every PCS?
That sounds really great, doesn't it? But no, unfortunately, that's not something that we're able to do. You really have to be following the regulations of the place that you physically reside, not home of record in this case.
Ah, such a shame.
It
That
is.
makes it so, I always bank on that. Like when it's like, oh, my home of record is this. Like, we're just going to do that, and they're just like, oh, okay, And
Exactly. Well, I
so,
feel like for some people it would probably be advantageous if you
mhm,
are coming from a state that has maybe laws that are easier. But there are some people on the other end that if you were coming from a more difficult state and that's your home of record, you're just stuck with that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So coming in on the comments, so it shows up as Facebook user. So I discovered this last week. We streamed this live directly into our group from our streaming platform. And so in the group, if you're commenting, it doesn't show your name because the group is set as private, which is why it shows like this. So if you go to our actual page, PCS Like a Pro, will be able to see who you are. But she provided the website here, the HSLDA.org, which lists the state's requirements and liaison contacts and stuff to kind of help make that process
Yeah, HSLDA
easier.
is amazing. I know when we were in the marketplace, the tender of duty stations for the Army, when we were in the marketplace and we had sort of the options of what might be coming up, I think anyone who homeschools, your first stop is going to be that website. There's a big map up there that's going to show you these are the requirements for every state, and that'll give you a little more. I know for us, we were kind of like, oh, I think I would rather go this way. So it definitely plays a role. Just like if you send your kids to public school, you're going to look up all the local schools and everything. In our case, we go there and then look up what state we feel like we would be most comfortable in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. So we talked a lot of stuff, OCONUS wise with state regulations and stuff. What happens if you're at an OCONUS location? That's not Hawaii, that's not Alaska, you're Germany, Italy, Korea.
Right.
What kind of regulations and rules do you go off then?
So our first time homeschooling, it was only about 6 months, but we started this journey in Germany, which is fantastic. And so I actually withdrew my son from kindergarten in the DoD schools and said, hey, I'm homeschooling. What do I need to do? And they said, nothing. So if you're under SOFA agreements, you're going to follow under DODIA's educational requirements. And I'm sure Megan will put it in the notes for you and I can go on and leave a comment. But the DOD has an actual homeschool regulation under DODIA. But generally speaking, you're free to do just about whatever you'd like. There's no state to necessarily report to, so there's not a lot of involvement there. The DoD schools, at least where we were, however, are really great about you can use their resources. So my son still did a running club, and you can put them in for specials and things like that. Some families aren't interested in doing that. Some are. So if overseas is something you're looking at, definitely look at the DODEA website, and I'll link it down so you guys can go and check it out. But they have a whole policy laid out on homeschooling and how SOFA agreements affect that, and you get into all of that. So you're really going to have to look state specific or country specific for their SOFA agreement, and then also for DoD.
So one of the other things that we all like to know about, homeschooling, in my mind, I always think like it probably costs a lot, right? There's a lot of, you have to buy the books, you have to buy the curriculum, you have to buy whatever little things you may need for teaching in a classroom type of
5,000
thing.
pencils.
Yeah. Right. So funding is always a big issue. So being a homeschooling family, how does that happen? Does the DoD help pay for homeschooling? Is there funding somewhere? How does that piece of it kind of work in the puzzle?
Right. So as far as funding goes, the military has no role here in funding homeschooling. Mm-hmm. So that, again, is going to go back to a state-by-state basis. And some of that's going to be for your family to choose. And then some of that is just, given where you are. where I am currently in Alaska, you have the choice of whether or not you would like to be involved in a program that will assist with funding, or if you want to be just a completely independent homeschooler. So here I have a choice in that. In Texas, homeschool is considered a private school. There's no funding for it, but the state is not involved. So that's a completely different version. I believe it's New York, I believe, is an example of a state where you are not going to have a choice but to have regulation. But I do think there's options for funding there as well. That's a really personal decision, and it's going to be about 50-50, whereas some homeschoolers really appreciate and need that assistance from the state. Others are, no, thank you, I just want to do my own thing. The only caveat to that is if you are in a remote assignment where there is no DoD school available, Poland, for instance, I have a friend who's currently stationed in Poland. They don't have the option of a DoD school. Because of that, the military does assist them in paying for their homeschool supplies. So that's an option you can look into. It's the non-DoD schools program, and there's actually a special link and regulations and all sorts of things that apply to it. But the only time the military is going to financially assist you with homeschool is if they station you as a family. So you have to have command sponsorship. This isn't just like I popped in. But if you are command sponsored at a location that doesn't have a school for your children, you can get financial assistance for homeschooling.
Well, that is pretty cool to know. So another piece, we talked all the state regulations, the country regulations, all of that. Physical regulations of moving homeschool equipment from one location to another, those DoD regulations. Me and you kind of talked about this a little bit. I assume, do you want me to answer about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to leave the actual regulation part to you. I follow through as best I can on that stuff. Mm-hmm. I will just say that a thing that a lot of homeschoolers are going to find is we have a lot of books. Mm-hmm. I went and weighed one of my book boxes because I'm not completely unpacked yet. So I weighed a book box last night and it was right at 50 pounds. And then I checked my inventory and I had 42 book boxes on this last move. So that's a literal ton of books. It's 2,000 pounds. So I would just say that's something you definitely have to be cognizant of if you're homeschooling is what is your book weight and then what is your moving allowance and how much of that are you willing to have, go toward books. So just estimate it's about 50 pounds a box and then take it from there. I have a lot of books, but you don't have to have that many books to homeschool. So if you're not comfortable doing that, you don't have to do that. Libraries are a wonderful thing. The on-post library system can transfer things to you. My son reads things on a Kindle. I personally just really love a physical book. Mm-hmm. If you are going to be moving lots of books, curriculum is really expensive. So I have a lot of expensive books and expensive sets of books. So I don't inventory my whole house like Megan does because she's amazing and I'm not. But I do inventory my books. So I have, an app that shows me every book that I have. And then for curriculum specifically, I definitely have a special section for that. When we go to move, one of the things that I do is on the inventory sheet where the page where all of my, book box, where that's listed, I do typically write in there somewhere inventory available upon request. And I will print that out and give that to them. So if they want to see the list of all of my books, I'm happy to give it to them because if something were to happen, God forbid, I want to be able to replace my specific books and not just, a book.
Right. No, absolutely. So in regards to DoD regulations of, homeschool equipment and books counting as spouse pro gear, they currently do not count as spouse pro gear. The only way you can get around that is if you have a teaching certification license where you can show that you're a teacher because you might be able to get a job at your next location as a teacher and be able, to show that then you can count equipment then as spouse pro gear for you. But if you are not licensed or certified as a teacher, then you cannot count that equipment as spouse pro gear. And I've heard of families saying, we were able to, they didn't check, we got away with it. And if you were able to, that's great for you. Just know that a lot of transportation offices are starting to crack down as to what it is spouses are claiming as spouse pro gear, and that they are starting to go out and verify what it is you're claiming and if you have the certifications to back that up. That's coming from We had years of spouses kind of abusing that program, unfortunately, where they, we're going to be overweight. We'll just count this stuff as my spouse pro gear. We'll be good. It'll put us under, not to worry about it kind of deal. Companies were catching on, transportation offices were catching on. And so they've been starting to kind of crack down on that. So for a lot of things, you have to be able to show that you are certified, licensed, whatever it may be in your field that you're claiming as spouse pro gear. We'll get the links dropped into the chat for you that explains exactly the definition of what spouse pro gear is, so that way you can utilize that and know what that says. But unfortunately at this time, and I know it's been a hot debate in our homeschooling groups, that it just does not count as spouse pro gear right now.
Yeah, and that's actually my personal experience, not to out myself, but our very first move from Germany to Texas, I had spouse pro gear, and I am not a licensed teacher. So they said it was fine. And this was actually transportation. I mean, it wasn't like anything shady was going on, but at the time they did accept it. When we moved from Hood, however, they asked specifically for a teaching certification in order to count that. So, they are cracking down on it, and this is where we are. So we really just have to be cognizant of what you have and make sure that it's not going to impair your family.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Also, if you're doing a partial ditty, books are really heavy and they fit in your car. So just, smash your car up with those books if that's what you need to do. I had a lot of books in my camper hauling it to Alaska.
Books do add up. So we're going to be moving next summer. We have our very own small library. And so like Stephanie, who weighed their books, I'm probably going to be weighing our books just on a curiosity of how much of our shipment is our small library, because they do add up. And it's one of those things when we do the PCS purge. And so it's one of the things that there's me and my husband standing in front of our bookshelves wondering, like,
I know,
are we ready to part with any of these? Like, are we ready to, well, maybe not right now. I finally did let go of some of my college textbooks. I did let go of like my chemistry. Listen, I'm a biology major. I hated chemistry. I held on to my chemistry textbooks for however long it's been. I finally said, I don't need to hold on to these ones anymore. It's probably like a good 20 pounds right there, which I replaced with ceramic Christmas trees. But that's another story for another time.
My weight comes from books. Megan's comes from ceramic Christmas trees.
Yeah, we all have our own little thing that we collect. My husband collects books. I collect ceramic Christmas trees. It makes us happy. We get along. It's all good. We do have a question here. I wonder if you know the answer for Stephanie. This one here, so it came from the group. I was just looking in the group. So Ann Snyder, is the assistance thing that you talked about, is that only for if you're stationed Oconus, or can it apply to like remote CONUS locations? Because right now I'm in East Texas. We don't have a DoD school. We're, out in Podunk. If I were a homeschooling family, could I get some of that assistance too from the DoD, or is it only those remote Oconus
Unfortunately,
locations?
it's only for remote locations that don't have either a local American public school or a DoD school. So unfortunately, Megan and Podunk, you're not going to be eligible for that just because you do have the local public schools. So if you're choosing to homeschool, the DoD is going to consider that a personal choice. I would say you could look into what state you're in if you do need assistance. And some states, offer sort of a charter program where you can homeschool with the assistance of the state. I know we're taking part in a program sort of like that here in Alaska. And then also someone had dropped the link earlier to HSLDA. They have some programs where they do grants and things like that for families who feel like they need financial assistance, not military related, but that's an option for you if you're looking for homeschooling and you think that some financial assistance would be warranted. It doesn't have to be super expensive. If you stay home with your kids and you're not giving up that income, I know for us, that was the biggest adjustment is we gave up my full-time job. But if you're already staying home with your kids, homeschooling does not have to be super expensive. There are ways to do it and do it inexpensively and do it well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always hear of like other friends that they finish one curriculum, maybe it's for, second, third grade. They don't have any children coming behind them. So they always say, I have this, they resell it for either a lower amount or they try to trade for something else to be able
Definitely.
to
There's
make it more
amazing resale
affordable.
value. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing resale value on homeschool stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to put you on the spot here for a couple other questions, just to kind of debunk homeschooling. I think I think we all have, homeschooling are these people who are sheltered, their kids are sheltered and shy,
unsocialized kids, jean jumpers.
right? But I know from all of my friends that have educated me over the years to how they homeschool and what they do. Can you break down some of these myths for us that, there's things like co-ops and things that you can do and go to, and just like a typical homeschooling day, that it's not all done at the kitchen table. Like you guys go take field trips at, 9 a.m. when things aren't crowded and get the greatest deals in the world. So can you just briefly talk about some of those little things?
Of course. So if someone had told me I was going to homeschool, I would have laughed in your face. I had a career and that was that. But this works great for my family, and especially being military. When my husband is off, we take the day off, or I make him sub and I go get a pedicure. But it's really great that we can take that time off and do things. A lot of my homeschool friends, we usually make the joke of that we're not sure where the home is in homeschool because we're constantly doing something. So we just moved, so we're not quite in our groove yet. But my 10 and 5-year-old do ice skating lessons twice a week in the middle of the day. So we have that opportunity at, it's 1:00 in the afternoon and my kids are at the ice skating rink doing those sorts of things. We have a play group on every Friday. There's a Lego robotics club that they're involved in here. So there are lots and lots of things that we're constantly doing. And then, like you said, if I want to go to a museum, we go in the middle of the day, so it's quieter and there's not as much going on and it's cheaper. There's usually homeschool deals for things. You'll notice I'm not wearing a jean jumper. My kids are very socialized as this term. I have one who's extremely outgoing and loves to run and play, and he'll jump into anything. My middle child is a little more shy. They're just like other kids, and they come with their variances. And then the baby, he just goes wherever I go. Yeah, it's definitely something. Every time I hear these little homeschool things, I'm like, oh, really? I didn't know homeschoolers were like that. Or every now and then we'll be out in public. I know one day this lady, she asked my son, she was like, why aren't you in school? And he says, oh, I'm homeschooled. And she went, you're so normal.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, are there any other homeschool jokes that we need to cover?
No, I think those are the biggest ones. I know that was one of the things when people, especially back, in the day, my generation coming up in the military was like, you homeschool. And it was just like, oh, you must have 1 million kids. Oh, you must, live on the farm out at the edge of town. Those old, tiny type of things. And it's just like, no, very normal people. And there's a lot of things for homeschoolers too. I love watching the path of a lot of my friends that they share on Facebook and other social media of, today, we're at the zoo because we're learning about mammals, and what better place to, come do it than at the zoo while everybody else is sitting behind a desk at school right now.
Exactly.
So I love seeing those things.
Changed. It's extremely diverse. The groups that we're in have, extremely diverse people. It's not just the small Little House on the Prairie idea that I think some people still have. I am building a chicken coop right now, though. So I don't know if that's helping or hurting my homeschool rep, but
I think chicken coops are more mainstream now. Like a lot of folks I know have their own chicken coops and want to be able to have their own eggs and everything. I keep trying to convince my husband, since we kind of live in Podunk, Texas, that we should have our own chicken coop or even a cow. With our camper, I mean, it feels like it's the right thing to do at this point in life. So I don't think the chicken coop is hurting your argument for anything.
Awesome. Okay. It's also math. We're building things, we're learning. So definitely, look into doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've got one last question to end our segment with today. And it's one that a lot of people have when they start looking at the homeschooling journey. And that's, we're a military family. It's a tradition for our family. our sons are looking at wanting to get into the military at some point in time as a homeschooling family. Does that hinder our children wanting to, either apply for like the military academies or to enlist or to go into the service at all? How does that kind of transition of life happen for a homeschooler?
Right. Your son, daughter can absolutely still join the military if you homeschool. There are going to be places where it's a bit more complicated. So if you are interested in that, what I've seen friends of mine do who have slightly older kids, make sure that you're starting to look into this late middle school, early high school at the latest, especially if you're looking at a service academy. All of the service academies actually have a homeschool contact, so you can reach out to them and find out exactly what it is they're going to need to see from you, from your kid, to make sure that they're most competitive. But it's a service academy, so you should probably be doing that no matter what. If you're looking to enlist, you can do that as well. We have homeschool grads that serve in all branches. Maybe not the Space Force. I can't guarantee Space Force yet. But there are homeschool grads.
There will be.
Yes, there will be. In all branches of the service, you can reach out to a recruiter and speak to them. Or if you go on, I guess it would be goarmy.mil or whatever they are, you can actually go through and find what is expected. But yes, please do not let that hold you back. My own son is determined that he's going to follow in his dad's footsteps. So we're going to be going down that path eventually. And we have no intention of changing our homeschool journey to get there. It's just going to look a little bit different, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I hope you all enjoyed today's session learning about homeschooling and PCSing, the rules, the regulations, how to help make it work for you, and how we're going to end with this comment right here from Anna. Homeschooling kids are normal too.
Yes.
They're the same as every other child. So, but hope this helped you if you're thinking about homeschooling, if you're in the middle of your homeschooling journey, looking at your next PCS, wondering how to transition, because this might be your first homeschooling duty station. I hope this has helped. Stephanie, any final words that you want to throw out?
No, I mean, that was everything. But if you are going to homeschool, I guess all I would say is take advantage of the opportunities that gives you with the military. Take a break when you're moving. Take the day off when your husband has a Donza or whatever's going on. Really use that time to make the most out of this, because we know that military life can be really hard. So don't miss out on that opportunity. If dad's home on a Tuesday, you can take that day off, because homeschool is flexible and you can go to the museum with dad and really make the most out of your time as a military family with your kids. It's put that aspect of your life first and make sure that homeschooling is working for you. You don't work for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So great last words. We're going to end on that. So thank you, Stephanie, for being here with us today in your very early morning in Alaska. Greatly appreciate you waking up early for us and being here. And we will see everybody else next week on Wednesday, 10 a.m. Central. Y'all have a great day.